right. Good afternoon, good evening, Pub Theologians. Welcome to another round of Pub Theology. Tonight, we have a special guest. We have three special guests, actually. We have a special series called Badass Women of San Antonio. It'll be about once a month at Pub Theology. We'll have women interviewing women who are badass in San Antonio. So tonight, our guest hosts are Bekah McNeel and Iris Dimmick. Welcome, guys.
Hi, welcome. Thanks.
Yeah, so Bekah and Iris will be hosting. Iris is the senior reporter at the San Antonio Report. She's been there for about 8 years when it started as the Rivard Report. Now she is the senior reporter at the San Antonio Report. And Bekah used to work for the San Antonio Report as the education reporter, but now she's with Christianity Today and 74 Million. It's an educational online platform. So welcome, guys, and introduce your special guest we have today.
Hi. Okay, that's me. All right. Well, as you can see, we have Sheryl Scully here with us today. She's an award-winning public servant who was the former city manager of San Antonio. And we're really excited to have her here. She's written a book called Greedy Bastards, One City's Texas-Sized Struggle to Avoid Financial Crisis. So she's here as kind of part of her book tour, but also we're here to get to know more about Sheryl and her career, her very long career in San Antonio, and very, I would say, embattled career as well.
You don't get a title like Greedy Bastards without some battles. I mean, that's an excellent title for a city manager, and you know it was hard won. So I can't wait to hear.
So what are y'all drinking today? It's Pub Theology. What are y'all drinking tonight?
Well, I'll go first because this is my first interview to be drinking a beer while I'm doing the interview. So I'm drinking Local Buzz, the Honey Rye Golden Ale. Very nice.
Very good.
And I'm drinking Stiner Bock. I don't drink very many beers, but this is one I'm cool with.
All right. And Bekah, what are you drinking?
I'm drinking a girlier version of the Stiner Bock, the Weissenese, because it's what was in the refrigerator.
All right. And I'm drinking Local Buzz because Sheryl's all the Local Buzz. This is about a couple of weeks of their new book. So Sheryl, this is to you. Cheers.
Oh, well,
welcome to Pub Theology.
Cheers.
And I'm going to hand over the floor.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Hand over the floor to Iris and Bekah.
All right, great. Well, since we're in a pandemic, I'm curious about what you do. What are you up to these days? Have you picked up any hobbies, gone on any trips since this pandemic has started?
No trips. Travel's been limited, I think, for all of us, but I've spent an awful lot of time on the Riverwalk. We live downtown on the Riverwalk, so and it's been so wonderful to see so many people out and about and exercising. I am working out quite a bit, and I joined the Tri-Point Y when it reopened in early June, late May. So I've been going there at the hours when there aren't very many people there, just a few, and working out there early in the morning, visiting my mother at the Forum. She's there. I haven't seen her in person since early March, but I am able to talk with her through the window. We're able to communicate two-way. They have a speaker system, or we use cell phones to communicate. So I spend time with her. And this summer, I spent a lot of time getting ready for the book launch. And since the book launch, I've been overwhelmed with all of the virtual events about the book. I did one earlier today. So it's been every day since early August, which has been wonderful. I'm glad there's so much interest. And I've been very amazed at how many people said, oh my gosh, I didn't realize the extent to which all of this was going on at City Hall, what I talk about in the book, which is only a fraction of what was going on at City Hall. But I'm glad people are learning, because that's what I wanted to accomplish with the book. A little bit of a history lesson, but also a little bit of a guidebook for other public administrators and city managers and elected officials who are dealing with a turnaround of their local government organization.
Yeah, and so when you kind of sat down to write the book, who were those readers in your head? I mean, you mentioned administrators, probably your Some of your former colleagues at the city probably would want them to read it. Numbers you were picturing in your head.
Well, first of all, the local community, because for all the media coverage and social media about the incident, I think the main point of why we took on this challenge was mainly misunderstood. And because it was always more sensational to be able to report the latest controversy and perhaps airworthy quote of the day, as opposed to understanding the depth of the issue and the financial implications for the community. Because we, and I say we because my team and I took this on really to protect the taxpayers of San Antonio for the long term. We had projected, as you know, that these contracts with police and fire would bankrupt the city if left unattended over the next decade. And so we took on the challenge to correct that. But statewide and nationally, it's really for other city managers because these issues, police reform, changing public safety contracts, are being discussed throughout the country by cities. And I hope that other city managers can learn from our experience here and hopefully avoid some of the pitfalls.
Right. And you were kind of made to be front and center of that fight between the city and the police and fire unions. Was that done? Was that a conscious decision to be like, let's have Sheryl do it? Or was that kind of a result of maybe some political pressure?
Well, the mayor and council at the time wanted me to be out front. Mayor Castro was mayor at the time, was very supportive of taking on this issue. We prepared a business case, presented it to him and to the full council. I had begun a year or two before that presenting the financial picture to kind of lead up to this, knowing that we needed to take this on. It became really evident to me that we needed to make changes during the Great Recession because our revenue was less than the previous year for several years in a row. And so rather than increasing taxes, I wasn't going to recommend increasing the property tax rate. I didn't my entire tenure as city manager. In fact, I recommended that we lower the rate 4 times, and the council did that. But we had to cut back in other areas because no one wanted to cut public safety. It's a core business of the city. It's an important service. And so we had to cut library hours and community center services and reduce parks maintenance and reduce street maintenance. And these are also priorities for the community. You know, now during COVID, I hear people saying, why didn't we invest more in public health? Well, there weren't people clamoring for more money being spent on public health during my tenure as city manager. It's important, and much of the funding comes from state and federal funds. But I knew that we had to make these changes or it would be difficult. So I was asked to be out front, and Mayor Castro kept the votes together on the city council. But then, of course, we know he left in the summer of 2014, and we started then with another mayor who was supportive but had an entirely different approach. And because the unions drug this on for years, they were able to take advantage of the changes of city council members because we have so much turnover in San Antonio among council members.
Yeah, and I mean the extremely heated and very personal towards you as well. And you know, somewhere in that mix comes the book's title, Greedy Bastards. For our readers who maybe or watchers who maybe haven't read the book or seen it yet.
Readers too.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe tell us quickly the background of the title of the book.
Yeah, a good title for a badass woman, huh?
Exactly.
So I cannot take credit for the title. It was inspired by the police union president who, in one of his early interviews, that I think may have been converted into a social media type ad, said that my team and I were portraying them as greedy bastards. And at the end of one of them that I saw, he said something like, "She thinks we're greedy bastards, but we're not." And I remember when I first saw that, I was watching it with one of my staff, and I said, "Oh my gosh, if I ever write a book," he just gave me the title. And that was back in 2014. So we used to joke about that over the years. Now, I did not think that this challenge would take as long as it did. It was 6 years to get to conclusion. Actually, 7 for me, because I started presenting the business case in 2013, and we just received the Fire Union Arbitration Award this year in 2020. I knew it would be hard. I thought it would take a couple of years, perhaps, but I didn't think it would take 6 years to get to conclusion. So there were people who questioned and said, as I was leaving City Hall, "If you write a book, are you still going to use that title?" I said, "I think so.
Yeah.
I think I shall." And of course, timing is everything. And with this topic being front and center this summer, it even made more sense. But I've had so much feedback on great title, glad you wrote the book. So I've been a bit overwhelmed with how well it's been received.
Well, and do you think that the union and maybe even the public would have had the same type of reaction to what the city wanted out of those contract negotiations if you had been a man?
No, not at all. I think they would not have treated a man, especially a man from San Antonio. I don't think they would have treated him that way.
Yeah.
At all. Yeah, it was vicious. It became very personal. Not entirely surprising, because in their handbook, their chief negotiator, the police union chief negotiator, authored a book entitled Police Union Power, Politics, and Conflict in the 21st Century. And it's how to fight City Hall if they try to change a union contract. One of the ways is to try to sabotage bond programs. And you'll recall the fire union circulated petitions to stop the streetcar project that was recommended by VIA and the county.
Right.
They complained that we were building fire stations through the bond program that were too big. And I thought that was pretty amazing, since many of the historic fire stations in San Antonio were not even big enough to house today's equipment. And so the equipment was sitting outside while the firefighters were living in these small, very cramped quarters. And we built them so they would last for the next 25 to 40 years for the future kind of equipment that we need, and not just for today's equipment. So they were fighting us all the way around. And within the book, they talk about picking someone out and placing the person in the crosshairs and just pounding the heck out of them.
Yeah.
And so it was very hurtful and negative, I think, not only for the city, for me, but also for them, because people grew very tired of that.
And working through that challenge, like trying to get the city to be financially stable, that's all really part of the effort to professionalize the city, which needed a lot of that in 2006. And I mean, the word professionalize in this context does a lot of heavy lifting. Like it's from like the small details that you actually talk about in your book, of like there not being even passwords on city computers, things like that. I wonder if, like, what were some of the more surprising changes that you saw in 2006 that needed to happen? And is that type of need for reform common in a lot of cities? Like, do all cities eventually need massive reform? Is this part of the natural evolution of cities, or was this unique to San Antonio, do you think?
Well, it was nothing that I had experienced previously. I had began my career in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and it was a well-regarded council manager form of government city. very professional, had strong city managers over the years. I was the first woman and the youngest person ever appointed city manager there at age 32. I think back on that now and wonder what in the world did I know back then, but they saw promise in me, and it was a well managed city. And I had been the deputy city manager there for 5 years before that. So I certainly knew the operation, and then was recruited to Phoenix, which was considered one of the best managed cities in the country. And I was looking for a high growth experience, having worked for 15 years in Michigan in the Rust Belt, where it was cutback management every single year. So I had good experience with that. But I wanted some growth experience in a bigger city. I grew up in the Chicago area. I love big cities, and Phoenix is the largest council manager form of government city in the country. So when I was recruited there, even though I'd never been to Phoenix before, I was recruited there. It was a great growth experience. Our kids were preschool age at the time, so it made sense if we were going to make a move across the country to do that before they were heavily involved in schools in a local community. And sometimes city managers move around a lot because the average life of a city manager is only about 5 years in a position, if that. And so to be city manager of San Antonio for 14 years was a long time. I think too long for the unions. They didn't want a strong city manager that they couldn't manipulate.
Right. Well, and you talk about that a little bit in the book, like how your children and their education and their lives kind of played into your decision making. I wonder if you could just talk about that a little bit. Did you find that that challenging during that time to?
Well, yes, but and I encourage all managers, and I really worked hard in San Antonio to work with women and men to provide additional family leave for men and women on the birth or adoption of a child. And it's a partnership, and you need family support to do that. So both of my children were born while I was city manager of Kalamazoo. I worked till I was in labor the day of. I was in the office when my son was born. My daughter was born on a Sunday.
Wow.
But my son was born on a Wednesday, and when I don't highly recommend this, but I knew I was in labor and I had a long labor with my daughter. So I went into the office until noon, and my doctor said, meet me at 1 and we'll get this going. And my son was born then about 7 that evening. And I only took 2 weeks off and went back to work. But my husband at that point had quit his job and went back to graduate school. So he was taking care of our daughter, who was born a year and a half before that. And then our son. So, my husband was way before his time, a bit of a Renaissance man by saying, yeah, I'm going to go back to school. I'll take care of the kids. And he would have to leave me notes as to, if you're going to feed Courtney peas, you have to mix applesauce or she will not eat the peas. And it was a reversal of roles, at that time. This is 30 some years ago. So, but it was great. And then when I was recruited to Phoenix, it was as deputy city manager. And people questioned me and said, you've been city manager here for 5 years. You're being recruited to Phoenix. Why would you go as a number 2 person? I said, oh my gosh, it's considered one of the best in class. I'll have an opportunity to work in this high growth environment. It'll be a lot warmer than Michigan. And I said, if it doesn't work out, I know I'm marketable and we'll go somewhere else. And we ended up staying there for 16 years. And I wasn't looking. I didn't apply for San Antonio. A search firm contacted me and said the mayor and council were very interested in me because of the work I had done in Michigan and especially in Phoenix in a high growth environment with a similar population to San Antonio. And as you know, I turned down the job the first time.
Right.
But then Mayor Phil Hardberger convinced me the summer of 2005 to come here. but I made decisions, when I decided to come to San Antonio, the timing was right. Our daughter just coincidentally had chosen to go to the University of Texas when she graduated from high school in Phoenix. So she was a sophomore when I was recruited to San Antonio at UT. And our son, who was a phenomenal soccer player, was being recruited across the country. And I knew that he wasn't going to be staying in Arizona to go to college, and he was a senior in high school at the time. So it made sense. The timing seemed right, family time for us. We'd be empty nesters, and Colin wanted to go to school, and he ended up going to school and graduating from Cal Poly in San Luis Obispo, California. And Courtney was in Texas. So I said, well, if I go to San Antonio, if that were a choice, it's only an hour away from Austin, and I could see her in some of her activities at the university. So they were family decisions that we all talked about, and does this make sense? And I'm not a job hopper. I was in Michigan for almost 15 years. I was in Phoenix for 16 years, and then here 14 years. So, it's about 15 years in each spot. So
Yeah, I wouldn't call you a job offer.
no, not at all.
I have a question about your time, like having it for that long and being in, longer than the usual city manager gig allowed you to invest in other parts of the community. And I wanted to bring up something that I know is very dear to both of you, which is was corneation and the benefit that had for the community here, and the different organizations that it benefited, and AIDS relief. And here we have some excellent photos. And I think one of the fun things that people need to know that you guys share is that red bodysuit. Not necessarily that red bodysuit, hopefully, but
Yeah, tell us about that.
Yes.
Wow. Well, I have to give credit to Tony Bradfield and Dr. Kevin Black. They lived in our condo building, and they convinced me that I should participate in corneation. Actually, I should back up. Tony took me to the first year I was in San Antonio, 2006, to corneation, which I thought was hilarious. And, there's a lot of political satire and jokes about the community, and in a fun way, and can be a little raunchy, but was so much fun. And I became a fan. And so when they asked me if I would do it, I said yes. And I will say that there were people that I worked with that said, "Oh my gosh, you can't do that. That is way, outside of your lane." And I said, "Come on, we're going to have some fun." And we did. I don't know exactly how much money we raised, but we did raise over $150,000 for the AIDS Foundation in the 6 shows that we did, 3 nights, 2 shows a night. And we made lots of great friends. My husband, Mike, worked the green room, and we had lots of people who might not necessarily come to corneation, who came because I was involved, and it was good. It's probably it's one of the top 3 things that I participated in San Antonio as far as fun. And later on, as I made changes in some city policies to support the gay lesbian community, I had a lot of support.
And there we have Iris up on the screen too. That's for those who don't know. So immortalized was that character that later it came back with Iris playing you. Very meta for the evening.
Yeah, there's Mayor Ron. And
yeah, I remember texting Sheryl, I think the night before. I was super nervous because I hadn't really told you what our skit was about or anything. I remember texting her and just saying, "Just so you know, I'm playing you, and I hope you find it's funny." And I can't remember which year. I think it was the first year it was.
Okay.
But you were very gracious, and then a couple years later allowed me to wear the exact same costume that you got to wear, and I'm amazed that it fit me because you're in such great shape. And And we made this very large poster that says, "I'll be watching you." It's kind of a play on Eric Walsh becoming the new city manager and you keeping a close watch on all of that.
Well, and Eric's doing a great job, and the staff came and participated and came to coronation, and it was a lot of fun. Mayor Hardberger actually had a role in the skit. He did a voiceover and came
Oh,
to
awesome.
coronation. Yeah, and
I mean, those side to side is actually pretty dead on.
Yeah. I can't get my hair to do anything correct, but
well, we had a great time.
Mhm.
It was a lot of fun, and I'll tell a story. So I was pretty nervous about this, and I had, the opening scene. I had to, in this outfit and these boots, as you know, that had these platforms. I had to practice walking in those. Wasn't what I certainly wear every day. And I had to walk down these stairs, like about 8 stairs, with dry ice, the smoke coming out of it. And I was nervous and thought, gosh, do I need a drink to be able to do this? And then I thought, no, because I can't fall. And, that would be. But when the curtains opened and I walked down and did that first dance and performance with the other people in the skit that I was in, afterwards I had to sit on the throne all evening. And I remember my husband came up behind me and said, "Do you need anything?" And I said, please fix me a double. I'm really outside of my comfort zone here. And but we ended up, we all relaxed and just had such a great time, and made a lot of friends, and so it was great. We had a lot of fun.
I think it's so cool because there's so much pressure on women in public roles to project professionalism, because there's this attitude of people are waiting for you to not be professional. And it speaks to how well you had established yourself that you were able to go and do something like this. But it also speaks to, I think, changing that expectation for women in public facing roles, to say that, like, we shouldn't have to be scared of having fun or letting, proverbially letting our hair down. But also then publicly talking about the fact that we are parents and partners, and changing that expectation for a lot of women. And I think that has been, I know I've talked to people who were on your staff who said that they really appreciated that as young women, their one role model wasn't someone who was pushing them to suppress that part of themselves. And I think that's a great example to a lot of the young women who worked for you, from what I've heard.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm glad to hear that. We're all human beings and we have other sides to things. People would, I'd run into people after I'd been out running in the community. If I'd stop at the grocery store to pick something up on the way home, and if people would recognize me, I'd be somewhat mortified because I sweat a lot when I run, and I'd be really all drippy, wet, and awful looking, and they'd see me, and then I'd think it's okay. We all have different aspects to our lives, and when I'm at City Hall in a council meeting, it's strictly professional, and we're doing our job, but that's not how we are 24/7. Only 27 for me, maybe. We have other parts of our lives. And I also wanted to demonstrate to some of the younger women that as we changed policies within the organization, it was okay to kind of come in and out of the workforce in bigger and smaller ways. For example, those who wanted to job share, for example, or work part-time and for a moment in time, and then come back in. We want to keep people connected, men and women. So I think it was good to have a female who was multidimensional and not just about you have to be here at work and have a particular demeanor.
Right. Well, and I love covering city hall so often. It's good to get to know people behind the cameras and kind of off the record, and discover like, oh, they have senses of humor and like personalities and all of this. And so it's been a pleasure to get to know you and your staff. But I believe we have a special guest joining us right now to say a few
Hello.
words.
Hey there. Surprise.
Hi.
Hi. Hey. Miss
How
Sheryl,
are you, Tracy?
Serious? I couldn't resist this. This is too good.
Oh, well, I'm glad you're there.
I am here.
Tracy is a very dear friend and one of the first women that I met when I came to San Antonio and helped me get settled here. So thank you. Thank you, Tracy.
You are most welcome. I want to take just a minute to say something about Sheryl. I actually picked her up at the airport about 14 years ago when then Mayor Phil Harberger called me and said, "Hey, Tracy, can you do me a favor? I've got this new city manager coming in, and could you help me pick her up at the airport and kind of show her around and talk to her?" And so I thought, aha, this is perfect, because I had never met a woman city manager for a city this large. And I'd been married to a mayor, of course, who had a city manager that was great, but I knew the role that person has to play. It has to be somebody brilliant, somebody totally loyal to their mayor. And I was just fascinated thinking, okay, we've got a woman, yay. So I picked her up at the airport and we talked, we bonded that day because we went downtown. She and her husband, her wonderful husband, Mike, were buying a condo. So we went down to the condo, which, by the way, was a square box because nothing had been done to it, bare floors, bare walls. So we stood there for a while and sort of daydreamed about what a wonderful condo it could be and how things could be arranged, which was kind of an interesting thing to do because we didn't particularly talk politics. Went to a furniture store, looked at furniture, and ended up having dinner. And by the end of the day, I realized that I really liked this lady and that I could tell, having many years in politics, that she was a square shooter and somebody that you could trust, which is very important for a person in her position. Somebody that's loyal, equally important, and somebody very, very, very intelligent. So I am delighted to be able to say a few words about Sheryl. We've gone through 14 years now of friendship and all kinds of things that have happened. And Sheryl, many late night phone calls when we had to, sometimes close to midnight, sometimes things that were really needed to happen. Like one night I got a call about 8 o'clock, I think it was, and to come down to see you. And we were talking about having to raise another $1 million for the tricentennial events. So we sometimes our talks are pretty serious and sometimes they're just fun. But I've enjoyed them all and I'm looking forward to a whole lot more. So I have a question, Ms. Sheryl, for you.
Only one, Tracy.
You know me, I always have a lot. But I've been thinking about this today, and I was thinking, you after all these years in San Antonio working so hard, and I know how you work. I mean, people really would not believe it. Up at 5, most of the time down at maybe midnight or later, and all over the next day, the same schedule, basically. So when you quote unquote retired, you took this easy schedule of 8 to 5 to write a book, which is magnificent, by the way. And of course, extremely popular all over the country. And I'm so excited that it's going to be used in universities. I think it's important. And I hope you get to go and give the lectures so that young people that are wanting to get into city management can really understand how it's really done and what it really takes. But anyway, so what are you going to do now? You're going to have some time off. That's what I want to know.
Well, I'll always be doing something and more. So I did, as you know, join a corporate board, and that's keeping me busy, especially during COVID and the challenges all businesses have during this difficult economic time. But I am spending a little bit more time now talking with universities who have picked up the book, and a few of them are actually using them in their curriculum this fall.
That
And they have asked me to come and speak to their classes. And so I'll be doing that this fall and probably into the spring. Because as I was saying earlier, Tracy, the issues with regard to police and policing reform, as well as police and fire contracts, is an issue across the country. And so much of what we learned here and experienced, there are lessons to be learned from this book. But
yes,
I'm also working on the 2020 United Way campaign with Brad Barron and the Pre-K for Essay campaign. Of course, the renewal of that 1/8 cent sales tax is on the ballot November 3rd. I can say this now, so I encourage everyone to vote yes
yes,
for Pre-K for Essay renewal. It's so important. And, you know, when we started that program back in 2012, and I was responsible for the implementation with our team, we didn't know if it would be successful, but it has proven to be so meaningful to the community and is in greater need now than it was even when we started the program in 2012, given COVID and the need for children to have the best education possible. And our children, as evaluated by others, an outside evaluator, are performing better on average than other children in Texas, and as far as reading and math scores as they are in public schools. So I'm just delighted that it has been so successful. I served on the Early Matters Task Force that was co-chaired by Joe Strauss and Peter Holt. This year, Kate Rogers has been organizing that effort, and our goal is universal pre-K for all children in San Antonio. So we need that renewed in this upcoming election. So I'm
yes,
serving on the Texas Biomedical Research Institute board. They're doing testing for COVID vaccine and treatment. So I'm involved in nonprofit work here and also a corporate board, and I'll be doing some lecturing. So I'm going to stay busy.
Yeah, you sounds like the type of person that probably never really actually retires.
that sounds
Well,
like
you don't retire from life. I mean, I
Yeah.
retired after 45 years in city management from city management, but I'm also willing to help other cities, and I'll be speaking with a group from the Texas City Management Association in September, and also with other city managers of the International Association on the board that I served. I'll be talking with other city managers as well from around the country. So I'm sure there won't be a shortage of things for me to do.
I don't think so. Well, thank you, though. You sound like you're working full time again as usual, but I know for you this is the best thing. So, but I am excited about you going to the universities and speaking because I think you can get the best education in the world from books and great classes, but most of all from people like you, Sheryl, who are so good at what you do and have so much knowledge and to share with these people, these young people who are going to come into the world now. So thank you for that.
Well,
And
you're welcome. And thanks for joining us tonight, Tracy.
absolutely. We'll all make sure everybody votes for pre-K too. One of the most important things that's ever happened in San Antonio is pre-K. So thank you for that.
I want to encourage people with us on Facebook and live streams to also contribute questions. As you can see, this is kind of a fun Ask Me Anything with Sheryl. And so to encourage everybody to seize that opportunity and send us your thoughts. But it looks like we have another special guest.
Do. This is joining us on the screen is Maria Villagomez, the deputy city
Maria.
manager.
Oh, my most valuable player.
And Maria,
Hi,
how are
Maria.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, Sheryl.
I
How are you doing? It's so good to
I'm
see
well. You had a day of budget in council.
Yes, and I'm still here in the office.
I see that. I recognize the wall behind you.
Yes.
Maria's in my old office.
Oh, perfect.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I'm Deputy City Manager Maria Villagomez, and I just wanted to tell you publicly, Sheryl, one more time, thank you so much for the opportunities that you have given to so many women in during your career. Because I know it's not just here in San Antonio, but all the different cities that you were in, and that amazing reputation of yours, and really caring about women, especially minorities like myself. So thank you for being such a brave woman, woman of courage. I've never met somebody like you that was not afraid of anybody or anything, and you always figured out a strategy to take on a very difficult challenges. So you're definitely an inspiration. We miss you terribly here at the city. I always remember what you used to tell me when we had difficult projects, and there are a lot of competing interests in our area of business. And you used to tell me, whenever in doubt, always do what is best for the community. So always have the community in your heart and in your mind. And that's what I do when I find myself in difficult situations. So thank you again. And, just to ask you a question now that you are doing different things, I don't want to say retire because I know you're not retired and I don't think you ever will. But what advice do you have for women in local government as we are trying to make a difference? And as you know better than anybody else, all the obstacles and the challenges and the opportunities that we have. So what would you tell us? What would you recommend to us?
If you haven't completed your education, to complete at least a 4-year degree. And in our business, most of our executives have masters in public administration or MBAs. So education is first and foremost. Secondly, to get a variety of experience and to step out of your comfort zone. Women, I think, are more reticent to take on a new challenge because they may not think that they're 100% prepared. We know that men could be 30% prepared and say, oh, yeah, I could do it. But I think that women have to step outside of their comfort zone and be willing to try new things. I always tried to work in areas where maybe that wasn't what I thought I'd work in, but to get that variety of experience, because in city management, you have to be a jack of all trades and you have to juggle a lot. And so if for anyone who's aspiring to be a department head or to be a manager or a city manager, doing some things you think you might not be able to do and take on that challenge. So
and
that's
you,
my advice.
in a way, did that yourself when you originally thought you were going to go into journalism.
I did. I thought I would. I had always wanted to be a political reporter and work downtown Chicago and do that. And then I met my husband when I was in college, and we moved to his hometown after we graduated. And I took a job as a research writer with the city of Kalamazoo, Michigan, and found that I enjoyed doing the work more than writing about the work. And was able to have great opportunities. But, sometimes you have to make those opportunities. So I'd also encourage women to be the person, you want to be the go-to person. When you think about City Hall, you want to be the person that someone says, I've got a problem. I know that if I go to Sheryl, she's going to take care of it. She may not agree with what I want. I may not get the exact answer I want, but I know that I'll get an answer and that it will be taken care of. I always offered to work on the hardest things, especially when I went to Phoenix. I guess I did in Kalamazoo too. It's a pattern. And then some of the men would be jealous when I'd succeed. They wouldn't want to do it and say, I'm not taking that on. Boy, the chances are 50-50 of that happening. So you can't be afraid to fail. You don't want to make the same mistakes twice, but you also need to take on those challenges and learn from those experiences. So I stepping outside that comfort zone is really important.
Right. That's
And
great
you know,
advice.
it's like that Life cereal commercial, give it to Mikey, he'll eat anything. I think that people felt that way in Phoenix. It was like, oh, give it to Sheryl. She'll take on any challenge and work on. And we did work on, I had many once in a lifetime experiences there that prepared me to take on many of the challenges here in San Antonio. And I say we because Maria knows we all worked as a team. Our core values included teamwork, integrity, professionalism, and innovation. So excellence in all that we do. And I think we were successful in professionalizing, increasing the professionalism within the organization. And it was for people like Maria, who I found buried in the public works department when I came to San Antonio and saw how smart she was and was able to promote her several times. So great job,
Thank you.
Maria. And I know you're
Oh,
still
thank
doing a
you.
great job. And no, I don't miss all of those tedious budget sessions.
Luckily, I get to cover all those budget sessions
Okay.
still, so don't worry.
But one thing about Iris, I have to say, to compliment you, Iris, and you know, I would text you at 10 o'clock at night when the stories, you know, when you'd post your stories, or all hours
They're
of
waiting.
of the day and night. I don't think this is quite right. Can you? And you were very good about double checking and then correcting those. So I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. It's good to have very engaged sources that can help me clarify stuff and update stuff. Well, great. And we have yet one more gal that would like to join us. I think you might recognize her. It's Courtney Scully.
Oh, Courtney. Oh,
Courtney and I just met over the phone.
My favorite girl in the world.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks, Mom. Good to see
I've
you.
always said that. Hi,
Well, welcome.
Hi. Nice to see you. I haven't even talked to you today. Normally, I would have probably talked to you by now. So, what a nice surprise.
We're doubling it up. Yeah,
we doubled up. Courtney knows when she was in college, we talked every single day. And even if it was for a minute, but I would call or she would, you know, we'd call each other just to touch base, right?
Yeah.
And say hello. Now, we don't do that anymore. She's very busy in her job, and I was, of course, not as busy, but she bought us a portal for Christmas, so we can talk during COVID.
Good.
Which we did the other night. And I see you cleaned up a bit.
Oh, I had a day full of meetings, actually. I'm taking after you. I think we've swapped places a little bit. Well, maybe not this week, but I'm feeling like my calendar is getting jam-packed with meetings, just like your schedule has been over the past decades.
Oh, well, I'm so proud of you. You're just doing such great work. She's working for a technology company in San Francisco and just knocking it out of the park. So I'm just so proud of you, Courtney.
Thanks, Mom. I mean, I'm not quite sure. I wasn't able to catch the full beginning of the program, and it sounds like everybody's been asking you some questions. I think you have done such a great job of creating a community around yourself of strong, badass women. And I definitely have learned that from you. I guess my question to hopefully wrap things up would be, how did you create those boundaries for yourself and making sure you knew you had your community around you of other women that would support you? And maybe what would be your tip as all of us young professionals are trying to create those boundaries and maybe replicate what you were so successful at doing?
Well, early in my career, I seemed to be an anomaly. There were very few women in the room. And so I was reading a lot of books, and I came across a book that was written, it was called Managerial Woman. And like, okay, I guess there aren't too many of these. So let's read this book. You know, this is like 35 years ago. And but as I read it, I realized that they were describing me. And we also formed back then what was called the Kalamazoo Network of Women. And I think it's important to have that network of professional women that you know very well and that can support one another. And I've worked hard at that over the years, with women, but also with men, and have always worked in each city that I worked in to make friends with the media and talk regularly. I think you know, Iris, that when Bob Rivard was editor of the Express News, the publisher, the editor, and the editorial editor and I would meet quarterly off the record to talk about issues and policies, um, and that's important to have, you know, that broad base of people that you can call upon, that you ask for input, but also is a support network when you need help because they know who you are, they know what you're trying to do. But for young women, it's especially important because you're not alone out there. There are other people experiencing some of the very same things, and it's important to have that group of women. In fact, one of the women who is now in her 90s, but was obviously 35 years ago when I was city manager in Kalamazoo, Michigan, we still stay in contact, you know, and we still have those relationships. And she still sends me notes and her Christmas cards, asking me to contact her daughter or to ask and inquire about the work that we're doing. So making sure that you have that network and a group that you can call upon.
And I think everybody will see on their screen now. Here is a pretty good picture of the network, the intergenerational network that you've built. And in office, I mean, all of your realms are kind of represented there. You've got your family and friends and coworkers, and I think that says a lot. And I want to
thanks, Bekah. And yeah, I love you all, and I'm so glad you participated. This was what a wonderful surprise.
This was a surprise,
tonight.
by the way. Cheryl didn't know that we were bringing all these folks on.
I didn't. In fact, I was texting Iris before this program saying, okay, now what are we doing tonight?
Yeah.
I've been talking about this book every single day. So it's wonderful to see you all. And Courtney, thank you for making the time. Maria, I'm so glad that you were able to, even though you're still at City Hall. But I will say what I always said to you every night, Maria, go home, right?
I will, yes.
She'd always be staying late, and I was usually one of, if not the last person to leave City Hall. And if her car was still there in the parking lot, I'd call her and say, Maria, it's 9 o'clock. Come on, we've got to be back here at 8 tomorrow morning. So go home, get some rest. And Tracy, you've just been such a dear friend for so many years. Thank you for being here too.
You're welcome. And I want to add one thing too, really quick, Sheryl. I think one of the things when you were just talking is so important that you took the time, and I know you had what you put into your job, but you went out in the community and did just what you said. You made friends and contacts. And not sometimes people in your type of position, that they don't do that. They don't understand the security and the actual feeling that you gave to so many people, the trust they had in you. You created it yourself. So that's what's so unique about you. Thank you for doing that.
Oh, well, thank you. I will say that when I'd go out in the community and meet new people, and I would always, if I ask for the meeting, I always go to their office. And I remember the president or the executive director of the NAACP when I went to meet with her at the time. And she said, you know, no city manager's ever come to meet with me before.
Right.
And I thought, oh, that made me sad. Yeah. And it was Ethel Miner, and she has since passed away, but we became friends, and that endeared her to me and me to her, and we were able to call on each other as there were issues in the community over the years. So making those connections, and you can't wait for them to come to you. You have to go exert the effort to make that happen. So, thanks, Tracy, for mentioning that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
To all of our guests, I want to let everybody go do their evening. Say thank you guys for coming, and we're so thankful to see, to add some dimensions. I think you really get to know our guests by seeing who shows up for them, and that's harder digitally. And so this has been kind of a nice touchback to those days at the Friendly Spot where we were all sitting around having beer together, and you could kind of see who came out to support, and it really does tell you a lot. So thank you guys, and we'll tell you all good night so that everybody can, go deal with the children in the background or the papers that need to be filed or whatever. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
Thank you all.
Bye.
We're starting to get some questions off of Facebook as well. Maybe we should pull them up. This one is from Vicky Stearman. She says, what is the best thing one can do to make change in San Antonio? I have a cause that is very dear to me and do not feel like I have been very effective. Sheryl, had you had any times where you've seen citizens take up a cause and be able to effectively work with City Hall to get things done?
Oh, on numerous occasions, whether it's big and small, whether it's small in the sense of trying to have a traffic signal or park equipment replaced in their neighborhood, to bigger initiatives that include programs that are about the environment or extending our creekway system. If you think about the creekways and those wonderful programs, to get engaged on those, or if you're an advocate for eliminating domestic violence in the community and supporting our family and children's shelter. There are lots of people who are doing some big and small things, but you have to start somewhere. And if you start small, you can build on that. So I'm really proud of people who take on those tasks to improve the community. Pre-K for essay is not to harp on that, but if we can better educate a generation of children who stay in school, graduate, go on to either an apprenticeship or skills training program or go to a 4-year college, then we're doing our job for San Antonio.
And where do you think that people should start? If somebody has like an issue that's dear to their heart, who's their best first contact or their best first step?
Well, depending on the subject matter, somebody who's already working on something like that or has been successful with another organization that could be used as a model or a business model for how to go about organizing. I was earlier this summer and am still helping a group of young people who are very smart but politically unsophisticated when it comes to how do you make change, and helping them understand how City Hall works, how the community works, how people think about voting and making change in San Antonio, and just thinking through these issues. And I've been amazed at how much progress they're making on their issue. So identifying people who have done it and picking their brain, because there are many individuals who are willing to do that and to help. San Antonio is a very open community about that. So what's the worst thing that can happen? Someone tells you no, you can't do that. If someone tells me no, that just motivates me more to be able to go out there and try to make the change that may be needed. But so you go, be the bumper car, go then to someone else who can help you get started on the issue.
That's good advice.
Yeah. We have a follow-up question comment from Mary Brennan Stitch. We're not meant to work or live in isolation. It's so important to develop and cultivate a tribe of supporters. And I think that was a comment during this last bit about surrounding ourselves. And then Gavin has a follow-up question. When you were young, who influenced your life the most?
Well, I would say my parents, for sure. I talk about them a bit in the beginning of the book. I'm the oldest of 7 children. And my youngest sister accused me at one point of not being the city manager of the family when we were having a disagreement about care for my parents. And I said, well, actually, I am. And I have my votes. I have 4 votes. And here's how we're moving forward from the 7. But my parents were just very determined to make sure that we were all very well educated. And all 7 of us have college degrees. I have no idea how my parents did that. But they expected a lot out of us. I know I was told, now don't be getting into trouble. You have 6 younger brothers and sisters that are following you. So you have to set the example. And I was often in charge. And so my parents really were my biggest influencers of the day. I think it was well into my 20s. They told me, you're very good at this. You can do well. We expect you to do well. I think I was well into my 20s before I realized I really wasn't that good, but they made me believe I was, and I could go out there and take on almost anything. So, yeah.
We have one more question, then we'll kick it back to Iris to take us home. Noah Barshop says, one of my sisters is an engineer, another's grinding it out on her CPA exams right now. Both are pursuing careers in fields that have been in the past less than inclusive to women. Is there any piece of advice that aided you in your boundary pushing career that you would like to pass on to the young women working to do the same?
Yes, you cannot salute every issue. You have to pick and choose those battles. And there were many times early in my career, probably for the first decade, where I would be the only woman in the room. And I remember seeing the movie The Post with Meryl Streep when she inherited the Washington Post after her husband died. Interestingly, her father had left that newspaper to her husband as opposed to her. And she was the best studied in the meetings, but the only woman, and they didn't take her seriously. And it just gave me chills when I saw the movie because I could relate to that early in my career, being the only woman in the room. But you can't salute every issue. You have to pick and choose those battles that you're going to challenge, and because you want to be taken seriously. But you have to be the best prepared and always be the best prepared. That's just the way it still is, even in this day and age. But pick and choose those battles.
Well, and those battles can be very about explicit sexism and implicit, and it can be really hard to kind of even identify them and respond to them in many cases.
One of my sisters said to me, have you Googled your name? Do you see what they're saying? And I said, don't do that. Don't bring yourself down. Don't look at that.
Don't read the comments.
Yeah. I mean, don't do that. There's a lot of jealousy out there. There's a lot of sexism. There's a lot that people want to believe about you that could be the farthest thing from the truth. When the police and fire were attacking me personally, and that's part of their guidebook, that's what it says to do. I told my staff, I am not going to focus on that or read all of these things or look at all these commercials because I'm not going to let it bring me down. What we are doing is the right thing to do for the community. We have the support of the mayor and council, and we need to stay focused on what we're trying to accomplish. And oh, by the way, I'm not just working on changing those contracts. I'm managing the entire city organization of 40 departments and 13,000 employees. So I have to keep my head on straight, and I have to stay focused and have the strength and courage to keep going on everything that we're working on. So I'm not going to focus on those things. And I did tell them, though, that if there's something I really need to see, then show it to me. But I'm not going to look at that all the time.
Well, and you took on so many issues and so many initiatives, and tackled a lot of some of the city's hardest problems, longest problems, and some small ones too. But I'm wondering if you feel like you have any unfinished business at City Hall, or something that you wish you would have liked to have included the last year or something. Anything like that?
Well, there's always unfinished business.
Mhm.
The needs are so great in the community. I wish we could have done more with regard to our equity budgeting, but I know that that is continuing. We started that just, I don't know,
2017.
maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And I remember when I presented that first budget based on equity, it was controversial. Some people were saying, we'd rather have it equal, among the 10 council districts. And we said that just perpetuates the inequity that has existed here for the past 100 years. And the result of some racist policies that came out of the 1950s and 60s as to how San Antonio developed over time. But we did what was right, and a majority of the council supported that, and we were able to move forward. But there will always be more work to do. The one thing with regard to the police contract that I think is still out there that needs to be addressed in 2021 is the disciplinary process. It was a priority for us in 2014 when we started our negotiations, but by the time we got to the mediated settlement and were able to accomplish most of the financial changes that we wanted, not all of them, that I wasn't happy about that mediated settlement. I thought we left money on the table, but we did not get those disciplinary changes. And Chief McManus, who was one of the first people I hired when I came to San Antonio, he needs to have the authority to be able to discipline and terminate, if necessary, bad cops. And he doesn't have that authority now because of the Texas Local Government Code, Chapter 143, that provides civil service protection and arbitration for officers who are terminated, and also the conditions of the collective bargaining agreement. So that needs to change, and that should be a priority, in my opinion, going into 2021.
Well, I mean, it seems like it's anything. Everybody just talks about police reform so much. That seems to be like at the core of all of the changes that a lot of protesters and community organizers are asking for. So we'll
it
see how
is
goes.
very timely. My book was originally to publish in May. I had to make the decision whether or not to publish by the middle of April, and because that was the height of our first round of COVID, I decided no, I'd wait till September when we could do in-person gatherings and public speaking and book signings. But after the George Floyd killing, and in June when COVID spiked again, and it became evident that we weren't going to be meeting in person even by September, I decided it was time to get the book out because timing is important on an issue like this. And I'm glad that we're having police reform conversations at this point in time.
Right. Well, thank you so much for joining us. I know you have dinner plans with your husband. You have a life after all, but Greedy Bastards is available on Amazon. And is that it? Is it on Amazon? And it's also in bookstores too. So
It is in bookstores. And I was at the Twig signing more books today at the Pearl. The hardcovers are there, and I think they have a few paperbacks there as well. And I know some of the Barnes and Nobles are carrying the book, or it can be ordered hardcover, paperback, or electronic version on Amazon.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And I guess it'll be a textbook for some folks too.
Yeah, that's wow. That's kind of exciting. I did teach a graduate class at the University of Texas at the LBJ School for 3 years. Which was as helpful to me as I think it was to the students. I was able to hire several students as well who are still working in the city organization, but it helped me organize my thoughts about some of the issues and major challenges that we have. So I'm kind of anxious to get back into the classroom and have conversation with aspiring city managers.
Great. Well, I really appreciate you giving us your time tonight.
Thank
Gavin,
you,
do you
Iris.
have some closing? Oh, Rebecca, hi.
Yeah, just thank you so much for being here and kicking off this new series about embracing women who are really not shying away from making change, from making waves, from pushing for things. I think that you obviously have, we've heard testimony of what a great example you are, and we're looking forward to, with Pub Theology, hearing from more folks who are doing just that and who have decided kind of, if not me, then who, and are going for the changes that they want to make. And I think that that kind of gets to the core of what it means to be a badass. Not necessarily to just throw elbows for the fun of it, but to have some things you really want to accomplish. And I think this has really started us off on the right foot. So thank you so much for your time.
Oh,
And
thank you,
Iris,
Bekah.
for being one of those people too and being with us.
Thanks,
thank you.
Becca. And
All right.
thanks, everyone. It's been
Yeah.
fun.
Thank
Wear a
you
mask.
for everyone who watched. And feel free to share and rewatch, and because there were lots of good nuggets to share with the powerful women in your life. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you.